Hello again. Hi, this is Andy Nicol, the course tutor for the Perfectly Spoken Advanced course. And in this lesson, lesson 46, we're going to be looking at the following, the passive. And this lesson will correspond more or less to level C1, as always, IELTS 7.5 on the IELTS scale, if you're more familiar with IELTS. So yes, it's a grammar lesson, and we're going to look at the following areas. I'm going to assume that you have encountered the passive before, so I'm not going to present it all, but do a bit more of a sort of test type of lesson. So we'll look briefly at what is the passive, just to refresh your memories. Decide whether some sentences are correct or not. Should they be in the passive or not? Have they been formed correctly, etc. Then we'll focus on some specific uses of the passive, and we're going to rewrite some active sentences in the passive. In lesson 48, we're going to return to the passive and look at some other advanced features of the passive. Okay, so first of all, what do we mean by the passive? What is the passive? So we use active verbs to say what people do or what things do, okay? However, very often, and particularly in English, we prefer to use a passive. We want to say what happens to people or things. Here's an example. John Logie Baird, famous Scotsman, invented the television. The television was invented by John Logie Baird. So in the second sentence, we are not interested so much in John Logie Baird. We've included him because he's important, obviously, in the sentence, but our focus here is on the invention of the television itself rather than John Logie Baird. So in a passive structure, we also often don't express the subject from the corresponding active structure. So you could say very simply, the television was invented in 1926. In this sentence, we don't even mention who invented the television. But if we do, then of course, we would use the preposition by, as in the example, the television was invented by John Logie Baird. And here, John Logie Baird is what we call the agent. It's not actually the subject because this is a passive structure. So remember, the form of the passive is the verb to be. In the example above, it's in the past, was, third person singular, and then the past participle, in this case invented, it's a regular verb. Okay, so it ends in ed. Okay, I'm not going to give you all the forms because I'm going to assume that you are familiar with them. But while we're going through these corrections, some of these forms will obviously appear and we can look at them. So, some uses of the passive. We use the passive voice in the following situations. When the action, event, or process is more important than the agent, i.e. the person or thing that does the action. A significant proportion of the world's quality cars are produced in Germany. Here, we're not interested in who produces them. Here, we're focusing on the production of cars. We prefer to begin a sentence with something already known. We use the passive if we want to put some new information at the end. So it's where we're putting the new information at the end, we use a passive. For example, this style of painting was often used by the ancient Greeks. Here, we mention ancient Greeks as the new information. If we're focusing on the style of painting. Number 3, where we want to put longer or heavier expressions at the end of a sentence. I was surprised by David's insistence on coming along with us. The subject would be very long if we said, David's insistence on coming along with us surprised me. It takes you a long time to get to the actual verb itself. So we might prefer to use a passive structure here. Okay, so we have surprised up near the start of the sentence. I was surprised. Okay, so let's look at some sentences and decide if they're correct or incorrect. I'm calling the police. My bag has just been stolen. Is correct. It's present perfect. The person who took the bag, we don't even know who it was, so there's no agent here in this sentence. We don't say my bag has just been stolen by. It's not necessary to say by a thief because this is obvious. It's a thief who steals your bag. So we don't even have an agent here. So this is, my bag has just been stolen. We use present perfect, obviously, with just. Okay, here's the next one. The castle besieged superior forces. Is this correct or incorrect? Of course, the castle doesn't do anything. It can't be the subject of a sentence in this sense. So we'd use a passive here. The castle was besieged by superior forces, and by a stronger army. Superior forces. We use a passive. Verb to be in the past here, and the participle of besiege. Besiege meaning to attack a fort or a castle by surrounding it, etc. We looked at this in the language of conflict and warfare earlier in the course. Okay, so the castle was besieged by superior forces. Here's the next one. Entry tickets to the new Warhol exhibition have been reduced, i.e. they cost less. Is this correct or incorrect? And the answer is correct. Again, it's present perfect. We obviously prefer to use the passive instead of saying someone. Someone has reduced the entry tickets to the new Warhol exhibition, or they have reduced tickets to the new Warhol exhibition. Where the subject's not really important, the agent's not important, we prefer a passive. Okay, here's the next one. This is the famous writer and at one time political activist as well, George Orwell, in Spain, where I'm currently living, Catalonia. In fact, he fought in the Spanish Civil War for the Republic. And here is George Orwell was born Eric Arthur Blair. This was his actual name. George Orwell was his pen name for his books, including obviously 1984, Animal Farm, and and actually one called Homage to Catalonia, where I'm living. And this is correct. We use a passive structure, was born in English. In English, basically the mother does all the work, the baby doesn't do anything, so it's not active, unlike other languages. For example, in Spanish, then we have the verb nacer, to is an active verb, but not in English. He was born. You could say the mother gave birth to a child, which is active, but again, it's the mother doing it. But the child was born. Okay. Correct or incorrect? I have an interview scene here. My sister is interviewing for a new job at the moment. I'm sure she'll get it. My sister's interviewing. Well, here it's other people who are interviewing her. So I would use a passive. My sister is being interviewed for a new job at the moment. I'm sure she'll get it. My sister is being interviewed for a new job. Okay, so this is the verb to be in the present continuous is or are plus being plus the past participle in the present continuous. Okay, here's the next one. A car has been broken down again. A car has been broken down again. Well, it should know to break down is an active verb. So it should be a car has broken down again. This is not or shouldn't be a passive. A car has broken down. The car actually breaks down. It's an active verb. Okay, here's the next one. It's a famous game Cluedo. It's a murder mystery game. And this is the suspect, Miss Scarlet. The weapon she used to kill the person, a candlestick, and the conservatory, the place, the room in the house where the person was killed. So she murdered by Miss Scarlet by the candlestick in the conservatory. Is this correct or incorrect? Well, the person who died didn't do anything. It was the murderer who did the murdering, so this should be passive. And when we talk about the implement we use, instead of by, we use with. So it should be, she was murdered, passive, by Miss Scarlet with, not by, the candlestick in the conservatory. Okay. Similarly, a man was shot with a rifle, not by a rifle, when you talk about the tool used to do something. Okay, correct or incorrect here? Renovation work to our villa will have completed by the summer. Well, will have completed is future perfect and it's active. It's an active sentence. Of course, it's other people who, builders and so on, who have carried out the renovation work, so not the villa itself. So the renovation work to a villa will have been completed by the summer. Okay, it was builders and so on who carried out the renovation. Again, this is obvious, so we don't need to include the agent. We don't need to say by builders by the summer. It's not necessary. Okay. Correct or incorrect? The woman who's at the opticians here. An eye test. My eyes were testing when the machine broke down. My eyes were testing. Well, your eyes didn't test anything. It was the optician who was testing your eyes. So this should be a passive structure. So it's past continuous. My eyes were, it was or were, in this case were because eyes is plural. My eyes were being, and then the participle tested when the machine broke down. My eyes were being tested when the machine broke down. Another structure you can use, which we will look at in lesson 48, but I'll just put it there because it's a possibility and possibly one you're more likely to use in this situation. I was having my eyes tested when the machine broke down, to have something done. Again, we'll look at this in lesson 48. Okay, so now I'd like you to rewrite some sentences into the passive. Okay, so you'll have to think about how we should form these passive structures. Here's the first one. The police asked him a series of questions. The police asked him a series of questions. Pause the recording if you need time to think here. And it should be, he was asked a series of questions by the police. If it's not obvious it's the police asking the questions, you can put it in. He was asked a series of questions by the police. I hear they're going to promote him to departmental management. I hear they're going to promote him to departmental manager. Again, here a passive would be more suitable because we don't like to use they as a subject in these sentences. I hear he is going to be promoted to departmental manager. Again, we won't put by because they is not important. So he's going to be promoted to departmental management. This is going to for the future. So if the verb to be, going to, plus the verb to be in the infinitive plus the past participle. Okay, next one. Poor visibility may have caused the accident. So if we start with the accident, may have been caused by poor visibility. So may have, after may have, we need the participle of the verb to be, so it's been, and then the past participle, of course, caused by poor visibility. The accident may have been caused by poor visibility. Number 4, your attitude really shocked me. So we start with I was shocked, or I was really shocked by your attitude. I was really shocked by your attitude. Okay, here's some more. Picture museum. Trustees are taking over the running of the museum. Trustees are people who look after a trust fund or look after the management of a place, but who don't have a financial interest themselves in it. Trustees are taking over the running of the museum, running meaning the management of the museum. If you run a business, it means that you are in charge and you control it, you manage it. I'm running the museum. So, to make this passive, the running of the museum is being taken over by trustees. The running of the museum, the management of the museum, is being taken over by trustees. Here's another one. Dave has asked me to help him with his homework. I pause the recording if you need time to think, obviously. Have been asked by Dave to help him with his homework. I've put in the by Dave here because I think this is important information. You need to know who asked you, otherwise it's just kind of vague. I've been asked to help him with his homework. Who? So here it's important to put it in. I've been asked by Dave to help him with his homework. Here's the next one. Police arrested a man with a gun outside the... Sorry, police arrested a man with a gun outside the post office. A man... Pause the recording if you need time to think. Well, a man with a gun was arrested outside the post office. Here I haven't put in by the police because it's fairly obvious who arrested him. The only people who normally arrest other people are the police, so it's not necessary. Okay. Number 8. They will hold the next Olympic Games in Japan. Okay, so if we talk about the next Olympic Games, so we've got the future, so it's will plus the verb to be in infinitive without to. After will is a modal verb, so will be held. The next Olympic Games will be held in Japan in 2020, I believe. Okay, so that's it for this lesson. As I said, we will be coming back to the passive in lesson 48 and looking at it is believed that, it is thought that, etc., and the structure to have something done. In the next lesson, lesson 47, be a vocabulary lesson on the language of travel. Nice, beautiful sunset over the Taj Mahal in Agra in India. Okay, and we'll be looking at words, comparing and contrasting words such as trip, voyage, travel, etc. We'll be looking at other verbs associated with travel, and also adjectives to describe places, destinations, etc. So I hope that you've enjoyed this lesson. I hope you find it useful. We'll come back, as I say, to the passive in lesson 48, and I hope that you can tune in again to the next lesson on language of travel. Okay, thanks for listening, and bye-bye for now.